Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Praise Podcast. My name is Eric Lyde. I have the pleasure of hosting this podcast each and every time. Of course, I'm joined by, that's right, here we go, the one, the only, the co-host above any other co-host, the Brooke Paninsky is in the house.
Thank you.
And it's just great. It's going to be a great day. We have a lot of exciting content to get to. It is going to be really good. Excited to share a lot of things with you today. But before we get to that, there's some things that you should be doing to get the most out of your Praise Podcast experience. Right, Brooke?
Right.
This is key, all right, for you. And if you're watching, I'm about to help you out, all right? The first thing you should do is like and subscribe to our Instagram, because that's going to let you know every time we release new stuff, then it just tells you, and it's free. So you should just do that right now. Subscribe right now. Instagram. Follow us on Instagram. That's the Praise Podcast. Because, one, there's cool stuff on Instagram, and two, you can join me. You can come along for the ride of Eric trying to operate social media, which
It's
I am
quite a ride.
apparently, it is quite a ride.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I was trying to post a story, and I posted
But
a
you
reel.
made a reel.
And I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And
I said, "You made this a reel?" And he's like, "I made it a what?"
yeah, I was like, no, it's a story. And it was very much not. So anyways,
That's funny.
you can you want to be along for that ride. I can promise you that. So praisepodcast.com is the website. Thepraisepodcast.com is where you should go to get super cool resources like books, studies, all the things that we're about are on there, other podcasts, all those things, those type of resources are on there. You can get Praise Podcast merch on there, like this cool hat that I'm wearing. You could get that hat because everybody needs a good black and white hat. As you can see, we're wearing black and white hats today, which is totally unplanned. And the cream hoodies also totally
And
unplanned.
when do you ever wear cream? Never.
Well,
and you showed up today in a cream hoodie.
because I knew that I've outlawed myself from wearing black
On this
hoodies
podcast.
on this podcast.
That won't last
So
very long.
today
it's against your nature.
I grabbed the black hoodie and I said, no,
Can't do it.
Can't do it. What would be the opposite of black? So I grabbed this hoodie and I said, this would be the opposite of what my nature tells me to do. And then apparently you got the same.
That's
You
funny.
got the same message apparently today. So this makes 2 episodes in a row. We're
That we
basically
like-
twinning. So yeah, there's that. Anyways, it's going to be a great episode.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about.
We got to have a lot to talk about. Let's get the song Spotlight first.
Yeah.
And then we will get into some really good Christmas content that we're excited to share with you today. So,
Sure.
Brooke, why don't you kick us off on the song Spotlight?
Yeah. So whether or not I've mentioned this song before, it's worth mentioning again, especially in just the timing of the season that we're in or that we're walking, like in a ministry perspective. We're just walking like really heavy things with our people right now. And this song has, like for the last 2 weeks, I'd say, like has come up again and again and again and again and again. And just the line that's like, there's no way you're going to let me down. And so, it's called, or it's by Red Rocks Worship, and it's called There's No Way. And I'm going to just read some of the lyrics because it's just really good. But it's kind of like a prayerful, like war cry song almost. Like it's like when your spirit just needs some strength to keep going, when, you know, you're being reminded of God's character in situations and circumstances where maybe you, I don't know, like your circumstances don't match the goodness of what God is. And so it can be confusing for people when we walk through hard things. But more importantly than ever, during those seasons, it's just you have to remind yourself of God's character, and this song does that. So anyways, the lyrics go like this. It says, "There's no way that I'm giving up on the edge of my breakthrough. I've walked long enough to know there's a grace for me that's still enough, and a hope that I can cling to even in the lowest low. There's still one thing that I know. There's no way, no way you're going to let me down. You never have, you never will, and you won't start now. There's no way, no way your promise can fail. It never has, never once, and it never will. And then it goes on to say, there's no way that I'm backing out just because I'm still waiting. This is where I'm going to praise. Those Jericho walls are coming down. Even now, I feel them shaking, and I refuse to be afraid. And it just goes on to the chorus again. And so, I mean, like lyrically in these verses, I mean, the chorus, the bridge, all of it, it's just talking about, like, again, reiterating God's character for yourself in situations where doubt could really creep in and convince you, the enemy could convince you otherwise from God's goodness and his promises and his faithfulness and all those things. So, yeah, it's just a good song. It's very fruitful. So that would be my song spotlight.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that line, the waiting line. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's a great song. I totally recommend it.
So my song, I've decided that for at least the month of December,
are you gonna do Christmas
I'm
songs?
rolling with Christmas
No
songs
way.
because
You of all people.
I am on a mission.
Come on now.
I'm rebranding.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But no, I really still don't like Christmas music,
Oh my
but
gosh.
more to appeal to the masses here that do. I am who I am.
I'm trying
I
for my
can't-
friends.
I'm
My
trying for my
friends
friends. Yes,
really want me to.
they really care about it, and so I want to care about them. And so what I feel like the best way that I could care about them is to give them Christmas music that I don't think sucks.
Okay, well then let's hear it.
So here it is. I think you should check out the song Hark by Thrive Worship. So it is Hark the Herald Angels Sing, but it's just a good version of it that is fun. It's good instrumentally. It's upbeat. For the music nerds out there, it's a 12/8 time signature, which is kind of wild, but it's fun, and it's a good version of Hark, and it keeps the like original melody, because I think that's important. A lot of people will redo these Christmas songs, but then they like kind of change up the melody, and people like everybody knows Christmas songs. So like don't jack with the melody. They didn't. They did a good job. And
I mean, it's definitely not. Yeah, it's decent, and it's but that's a hard song for me to sing because I'm like, what are these words even like mean?
No, I had to get a dictionary
because
out
it's a
last
hymn,
night.
you know, but like it's like, whew.
We're doing this song in our service,
Yeah.
and we were rehearsing it, and I was like, I don't know how to pronounce some of these words. Like, what was the one?
Incarnate or whatever.
Incarnate.
Yeah.
Incarnate. And deity, and it was just they just use.
That's a good choice of a Christmas song.
Yeah,
though.
but Hark. So it's Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Yeah.
But cool. So
Cool.
Hark by Thrive Worship. Check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
So speaking of Christmas songs,
Let's
talk
Let's
Central.
talk.
Wait,
Yeah.
what is it? Christmas at Central.
Christmas at Central. So, again, if this is like somehow you have stumbled across this podcast for the very first time, welcome.
Yeah.
It's good to have you.
Great to have you.
Very quick background. So, Brooke and I, we work at a church.
I love that you just said Brooke and I.
Brooke and I. It's
fine.
hard when I'm
They
looking
get
at
it.
the monitor and we're dressed the same, far away.
Twinsies.
It's hard. It's easy to get mixed up.
Anyways, sorry.
Brooke, this is Brooke. I'm Eric. I know this. But anyways, we work at a church called Central Christian Church, and we lead our creative department and all things worship and media and production and everything in between. And so Christmas specifically, if you know anything about Christmas and church, obviously that's a very big deal. It's some might call it the Super Bowl of church services kind of thing. And so obviously Central, our church, has a very long-standing history of its Christmas services. So we are one of those churches that you would consider it's a big deal. Like, it's just a lot of time, energy, resources go into what we refer to as Christmas at Central. So because of that, it just it pretty much it's like Christmas is like that thing that's always in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
And it like even when it's like not Christmas time, which we'll talk about, like you're always thinking about Christmas because, it's always coming. But because of just the nature of our roles and all things that go into it, and we know there are so many people from our church that watch and listen. Hey, guys. That we get a lot of, because they know that this stuff doesn't just happen. And so we get a lot of questions, a lot of interest, a lot of intrigue on really, what are the behind the scenes that go into this.
Yeah.
And every now and then we'll even get, our volunteers will get kind of a glimpse, into some of the things. And they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this is what it takes, or this is how much time, et cetera. So we thought it could be fun to just do an episode where we just kind of dive into some of these questions, some of these things that people want to know about or have about Christmas in general. So really, whether you go to Central or not, maybe if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you lead or work in a church or a creative department, then we're going to give you a little bit of insight into how we do things. We preface this conversation with, we are definitely not experts on, we don't claim at least to be experts on anything, and we wouldn't say that this is the only way to do things, but we are just going to let you in on how we do things.
Honestly, if you're you're doing it that way, here's a better idea.
Yeah.
Email.
Send them in. Yeah. But this is just, this is what we know. And this
we
is
appreciate any kind of wisdom.
Yeah, this is how we found either it works for us or just the best way that we know to do it. So we don't claim that this is the only ways as we talk through these things. But I would also encourage you, even if you are not involved with a church at all, you can I think as we talk through some of these things, you're going to pick up on some key leadership things as well that you could take into whatever team you may be leading at this time in your work or your family, etc. Or also, if nothing else, this should give you some appreciation for your church staff. That maybe if whatever church you attend, they are probably going through some of the very same stresses and just tasks that we are. And so this gives you maybe some perspective into what your pastors or your church staff are currently working on. So there's that.
There's that. Okay, so we have a handful of questions to kind of guide the conversation. And as we talk, we might touch on some later and come back, or who knows. So we'll see how it goes per usual.
You know what I just noticed?
Just jump in.
You're not wearing your headphones. You finally said no to the headphones.
Finally, it's just, I'm over it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Sometimes I'll wear them, and sometimes, I just prefer not to.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know. Today you finally made, you've been talking about it.
And maybe it's just, I wear a hat often, but I never wear a hat when we record. And so it's but then today I was like, no, I'm just not even going to mess with it. Just not going to mess with it. Anyways, so speaking of Brooke not wearing her headphones, let's dive into the conversation about behind the scenes. Just different, I think it's cool to gain some perspective and share about perspective of the thought process, the planning process, the organization, communication, the planning, and to a really large, event that happens in our town. And so, it's going to be great. But anyways, let's start out with this. So first question, how do you begin to plan an event to this caliber? What does your initial task list look like? Which is a great question, because I think that's where it all starts every time, the planning, the organizational side of it, mapping out tasks and due dates and where we need to be at what point. We have different markers, for we always initially meet in July. And so we have Christmas in the summer.
Yes.
What does Hallmark do?
Christmas in July?
Is that what they call it?
Know.
Okay, I don't know. But, it's so funny because we start Christmas and then we have, it's July, it's 100 degrees outside, but then there's also Christmas movies on TV. So it's okay, that helps. But so we have an initial meeting in the summer, and that's for the, I think the first, what do we think? What do we want? What do we see? What has God, given you? Do you have an end goal? Where's John at? Has John, does he have a word yet? John's our lead pastor. And so And of course, everything we create, we want to be cohesive with not only just like the Christmas story, of course, but like with the main message and direction that, John's sermon goes. And so you're trying to mesh all these creative elements into one. But it does take a lot of planning. But we first meet in the summer, and then I feel like we'll meet again in early fall, like really heavily about it. And then it just kind of, as it comes, I don't really know that until like we get closer to time, we have like a deadline, like certain meeting points we always make.
Yeah.
But
generally, I mean, at least in my mind, usually once we get past, we do a thing called church-wide series here, which usually starts beginning of September.
Yeah, in the fall.
And that's like my mental note of like, once we get that series rolling,
it's Christmas time.
Then it's like, okay, we need to be, starting to really at least line out details on a lot of things.
And what's crazy in saying that, I've heard also like other churches and organizations, whatever, like they're planning right now for like the next year's Christmas already.
Oh yeah,
which is wild
yeah,
because
sure.
I'm like, how?
Yeah,
with what capacity and like with what staff wise, what we have and everything else, because nothing else stops. That's the thing. Right. So every weekend responsibility, everything coming in January, February, like all the normal stuff is still going on top of like Christmas at Central, which we start in like September. So, but then like I just think like that's so much, and then I just think, oh my gosh, other churches and places are like a year out.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sure honestly, like when you think of other, I mean, the reality is, there's going to be like 10,000 people that are going to come like be a part of this, and it's like when you think of other events of that magnitude, like a conference or other, whatever. Like, yeah, I'm sure that
we're late.
Oh, for sure.
Hands down.
No doubt. Like, they're like, what? You don't start until 6 months out?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
but that's like all like with where we're at, that is what we can manage.
Yeah,
and so like that's what works for us. It might not work for everybody else. And some people might be like, it's crazy that you guys start so early,
Yeah, for some people that might be a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like, oh my gosh, let me teach you about planning.
Yeah. So again, how do you begin to plan an event to this caliber? Well, the first initial answer is like we get meetings on the calendar. We know we're meeting about Christmas, in the summer, in the fall, and then as they roll out after that, as creative things come to mind, or as we need to meet with John, or as we need to meet with like social media team or outreach team. This year's the first year we've had tickets, and that's been hopefully so far been a really great addition. But again, that took meeting with, our executive pastor and our outreach team and our lead pastor and us. And, we just have a lot of meetings. So I think, how do we plan? We meet a lot. We communicate as much as we can to make sure we're on the same page, productively going in the same direction. And
I don't want to make this like the cliche churchy answer, but like I would say too in there, I mean, there truly is a lot of prayer that like goes into that, and I mean, especially like that initial stuff.
Well, we're not going to talk about that
yet
because that question's coming later.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But it's okay. You look at you trying to be pastor or whatever.
Well, I just because I don't want to. I mean, like that is a huge part of it.
So yeah. Communication.
Sorry
of course we pray. Of course, whatever. We'll talk more about that in a second.
Yes.
But so about what does your initial task list look like? I mean, it's different for everyone, but I would say like right out of the gate, like for me, I've got things that I am over, you have things that you're over. And then like, okay, I'll go first and then you can give yours. Okay. But basically right when we start, I know that every year, like we are contacting, the last few years at least, we are booking the Camel for our live nativity scene. We're booking the aerialist. We've got a great partnership with them. And like that's a beautiful artistic, another form of movement throughout our service. So we book them. Of course, later book their hotels, make sure they have everything. We have childcare for our volunteers. So we're, getting volunteers to run childcare, then you're organizing childcare, then you're creating a form for parents to register their children for childcare. So you're collecting that data so you can map that out. We have what we call a cast, and they are who are part of the live nativity scene. So it's Joseph, Mary, baby Jesus, the shepherds. So we are contacting people who can do that, who could ride the camel,
Right.
our wise men.
Yeah.
And so,
Donkey training.
yeah. So, we're organizing, costumes for that and the people for that. And again, ours, we have 10 services and a handful of rehearsals. And so, like, it's a huge ask, which is another question we'll talk about in a minute, but it's a huge ask for people.
Yeah.
So, but those are kind of like rehearsal dates. We get those lined out. That's on the task list of mapping out and just putting it on the schedule of, like, basically every Sunday after church and a few Wednesdays down the way, like, we make sure to get that done, communicate that early. We get our team, our band put together. We text them, communicate with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, those are, and then, of course, in the midst of that, task list is, like, creatively, we're meeting about, what's our theme, what's our direction, what elements are we doing? Are we, what songs you're building the set, So, I mean, like, there's a handful of, like, initial tasks like that that we just do right out of the gate to at least get motion behind, even though, like, some start and end at different times, like, throughout, the planning process, but to get them going, like, we do that, like, right out of the gate in late fall. Yeah. Like, and when Thanksgiving comes, it's almost essential. It's all in a good spot and essentially done.
Right.
For the most part. And then that way, then all the other, like, actual, like, creative building the set stuff. Is all after that.
Yeah.
What other things am I missing that are, like, initial
task list things? I think, I mean, it's, on my end, it's generally, really the biggest thing is, musically figuring out what that's going to look like, what songs, we do a live nativity scene at the end, every year. And so, just kind of what picture, what are we trying to do there? Musically trying to get that lined out because, the music is kind of what then is going to help us dictate, what we need creative wise, elements otherwise. So the music portion gets put pretty high on the priority list initially. And then usually once I have that, it's usually meet with John, who's our lead pastor, and just kind of walk him through musically where I'm thinking, where I'm feeling led to go there, and just kind of get his thoughts, see if that kind of vibes and jives with what he's feeling and thinking, just as far as where he wants the service to go and feel like. And so once we feel good about it, John feels good about it, and then we kind of all say, okay, this is this is what we're doing. And then that kind of sets into motion kind of that, like you said, that next phase of, okay, now it's time to visually, what do we need or want around kind of this set of music to kind of help tell the story that we're trying to tell.
And with that, when we have a vibe, another thing on my task list personally is, like, the, like, graphic board, like the graphics, the color scheme, the vibe, we send that, those images, the inspiration to Aaron, and he's our graphic guy. And so he creates a graphic package that sets, like, the tone for everything on socials, for everything on tickets, for everything on our poles outside. We, hang the banners, like, so that's another huge task. Lobby decorating, even, like, what we send our band and worship team for wardrobe, like, colors and all that. Like, so that's another huge thing we knock out of the way of just, the last 2 years we went, like, we had been classic Christmas colors, and then we kind of were like, well, let's change it up a little bit. Let's do, like navies and golds and for Christmas. And so we did that for the last 2 years. And then this year we're back to, like, Christmas colors, but then it's, like, real, like, they're warm Christmas, like, they're deep Christmas colors. And so it's just a cool vibe, very homey, traditional. Yeah. So that's another huge thing too. And then in the midst of all that, like, kind of going back to what you're saying, we were planning, like, the set in details. So you're really trying to map out from start to end every element and every transition and every piece, and, like, what goes where when, and then building that out, timing that out, because you have an hour. And so you're wanting to make sure that with the songs we've picked and the elements we've provided and the transition for things, videos that John's putting in the sermon that usually every Christmas we do like a baptism recap or a year-end recap, I guess is what it is. And part of that's like baptisms and events we've done, service things the church has partaken in, and like, all that. So it's like planning for that. So mapping out our service orders, huge. And again, something that gets done closer to like Christmas time, but that's a huge task thing that we think about as well in building Christmas at Central. So anything else about that with planning that you want to add?
I don't know. I'm sure that maybe we could talk on planning
for a while,
for days. So I'll say no.
So that goes into kind of what we were alluding to earlier. So how, with part of planning, like Eric was talking about a second ago, it's just like a genuinely like a prayerful experience too, like waiting and you're hearing, from the Lord. So like, what does the planning process look like when, we're in a prayerful posture to like create something, like the end goal being people encountering Christ, people hearing the gospel. So like the spiritual preparation, so to speak, like what does that look like for us? Maybe what do we have a process? What has it looked like before? Let's speak to that.
So
like the spiritual preparation with the creative side of all this.
Yeah, for me, it's generally going into that July meeting, for sure, I generally try to have, that meeting it's an open brainstorming style meeting, but I also want to enter into that meeting with some general direction for our crew. So, if we know, if either John knows or whatever, just some general kind of like starting points for us to then leap off of. And so leading into that meeting is where, for me, it's okay, a lot of prayer and just what is the direction? What do you want this? We know the Christmas story, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like you're not gonna you can only tell it so many ways. There's only so many ways to portray one story, and so it's kind of less about necessarily that, because you really know the story you're gonna tell, but it's more of like,
how am I gonna
God,
tell it?
how do you want, like, how do you want, what is the message or the tone or the way
that
you want it to be told this year? Like,
especially
what is it that people need to hear?
Keeping in mind that so many people that come might not be familiar with the Christmas story, and that those who are familiar with the Christmas story are still inspired by the Christmas story.
Right.
And so, like tone and tempo, direction, even if we had like themes. Like one year, the theme for it was Behold, because there was just this great reverence that we felt of like, we want people to like understand that they're like, this was such a reverent, holy thing. It wasn't just like, we wanted to take people out of the, I don't know, just maybe the repetitiveness of the Christmas story for those who were familiar with it, and even I don't know there, but we wanted it to be like we wanted to create a moment of just like of reverence, and so like our whole theme for that Christmas was Behold, like we want to behold, and so song wise we did that. We had a video element that went to that and spoke to that, scripture that spoke to that as well. But like this year, when we were praying, one of the things that we were in one of our meetings about it, and we have a handful of things that we know are going to happen every Christmas service. And then we look at it and we're like, okay, where do we have room to add some things? Where do we have room to maybe pause that element and maybe bring it back next year? For example, we oftentimes, an element, we're going to have the live nativity. We know we're going to have a silent night moment. That's one of John's favorite things to do. We typically have a caroling component just to make it feel like everybody's like homey and together, even though the crowd seems so large and, all that. And we've got aerial list and creative elements with that. So we know we have to have faster songs for them. And then we know we typically have an opening element, and sometimes during the service we do Christmas Sarajevo, and like there are just things that happen every year that have at first we thought like, are people bored? And then it became like, oh my gosh, like this is tradition for them. Like this is what they don't get bored of it. They expect it. Like they're like excited for it. Like a drummer boy element. That when that went away one year, people were like, bring back drummer boy, you know? So anyways, like there's just a handful of things we know that is going to happen, and then areas that we can be creative. And so all that to say, praying about this year, we were like, you know, God, like what's the end goal here? Like what is our responsibility in planning and on all the things? And one thing that Eric said is he's just like, I have an hour with these people when they come into the room thinking about, you know, the churched and unchurched. And he's like, what do I want them to experience? And then he's just, you know, we were talking, it's like, well, bring them to church. Like we wanted them to experience Christ, end goal. And so we're like, well, how can we best do that? How, in a way that, you know, people who aren't familiar with church, like, well, let's show them what church is like, and then and make it be something that they'd be like, wow, like when they leave thinking, well, I want to go back to that. And so when they come back to church, you know, the next week and the week after and the week after, they're like, oh yeah, like this is church. And it was like so similar. Like, and so anyways, one of the elements we decided to cut out from our service that we truly have always done is this like homey, with the piano like moment of like Christmas carols that we all kind of just sing together. And we took that out for the first time and replaced it with this element of worship that is just very strong and very inspiring, very moving, very powerful. And then we're like, so in this element, like we're going to bring people to church, you know, this, and the heart behind it was, you know, Christmas time, like we celebrate, like, you know, it's important, all these things. And, you know, yes, we have the lights, and yes, we have the aerialists, and yes, you'll see a camel, but like beyond all of that, like we want you to experience, you know, a moment with God. And so like, here we are, like editing that service and with the end goal in mind of just like, let's bring people to church. And so that, I think, again, in a spiritual sense of preparation is one of the great things that, you know, for this year that the Lord spoke and that we were able to kind of use to really direct like the tone and tempo of the service this year.
Yeah, for sure. It really is a incredible opportunity to, I mean, just even alone statistically, you know, our church will see on a typical weekend, you know, we're multiple campuses, but a typical weekend is going to be, you know, 2,500 people, are going to come through, you know, just actually in person. And so then you take Christmas, for example, and, you know, from all of our Christmas services, we will see, you know, we're probably going to see about 10,000 people that will come through the doors. And so when you think about, like, that's 4 times in one service, you have 4 times the amount of people, the opportunity to give them Jesus. And so, you know, we do put a lot of time, energy, effort, resources into that, not because it's just Christmas, but because we know for a fact that people are going to be in this room for the first time, and we know for a fact that people are going to be in this room that do not have a relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And so it would be unwise and not great stewardship, I feel like, if we didn't do everything in our power to take what little time we have with them and do our best to introduce them to the gospel and Jesus. And that's really been, I think, the driving force. That was what we all felt, I think, coming out of any meeting, coming into any meeting, and planning was like, we just feel like we need to, not that Jesus is not always the focus, but like a different level of like, let's not even try to make this that much different outside of what our normal weekend is, you know, instrumentally and musically. Like, let's do what we would do on any other Sunday as far as, you know, that goes. And let's just take, but people have a different mind. People come in with a different mind on Christmas. There's a different openness to Christmas. And so
than on a regular
than a regular Sunday. And so it gives you a chance to, like, I don't know, there's just people will see things and receive things differently.
Yeah, and I also think too, like, you'll hear about it a lot. Just, when you have large churches and they're doing this huge event, people are like, well, why didn't they spend that money for the children who are hungry in Africa? Or why did the church, all these things. And so like that, and then you're like, they're just performance based. Like they've got all this extra stuff and they're just worried about, like the show. It's not even about Jesus. And it's just like, oh my gosh, the enemy uses that like none other this time of year, and for churches, honestly, big or small, but the larger churches do get a lot of that flack, and so being a large church and doing a larger, program, like, that is for sure something that the enemy can use for people. But it's like, for me, I think, is there any evidence of that, God, in your sight? And so it's like, I ask the Lord, like, if people, not saying like, I've literally heard people say that, but I want to have the wisdom and perspective to be like, but just assuming that people are, or assuming that people could come in and say, or whatever. Right. I just ask the Lord, like, Lord, if you know my heart, that's all that matters. Is my heart in leading this and making some calls and creating this event? Like, is my heart to be seen by people because of the job I've done, or the skills that our teams, our team brings to the table, or that, our name of the name of our church is the one out in the community that people are, coining as the Southern Illinois event of the year, like, and we're prideful in that or whatever. And it's just like, if I know that that's not our heart, then the fruit that's going to come from this event is our heart. Like, you can't fake that, you know what I mean? And so it's like, if our heart is that people come into this building and experience God, and that we're well aware that there are people we're standing in front of that don't know him, and our prayer in that moment is for God and his power, that he come and that he meet them right where they are and reveal himself to them. Like that we're baptizing people at the end of service. And Christmas, a couple of years ago, we had baptisms we have every year since 3 Christmases ago. Is that right? Yep. And we've never baptized anyone at Christmas. And then like now it's something that like we prayerfully expect God to do, like to meet people for salvation. Yeah. And so anyways, but that, again, that goes towards the things spiritually, how we're preparing and planning for this event. So anyways, we could probably talk about that. Yeah, I think
the last thing I'll say on that, and this really just goes, this is for anybody, anywhere, anything, but like, I think spiritually, for sure, this year specifically, there's just an element of patience that has to be a part of faith in general. But if you really want to do what God wants, sometimes that involves waiting. And, like this year, for sure, like there are some parts right now. To date this, we're at December 5th. Okay. So like our first service is in 15 days. There are parts of our service that are not complete yet. Mm-hmm. And that's not from lack of planning. It's just
or praying,
asking, begging. But it is just because, again, like especially this year, you just know that like God has a plan for these services this year, and there's an outcome that He has in mind, and we want to make sure that we're doing our part to give Him that space and the permission. Because we don't want it to, it's not about us. And so it is requiring great patience on my part for sure, because I don't like fully that we're like 2 weeks away. And just being real, I don't know how a few parts of our service are still going to look.
Yeah, but then I feel fine about that. Yeah. And I think that says a lot too, because you're just kind of like, it really reveals like who you really think it's about and who's really in charge here. And so it's like, it could be very easy for us to be like, people need direction, people have questions, we've got things to plan, create, make, maybe, like, we don't know. So let's just use our creative brains. Let's make something work. Let's, that is great, and whatever. But like when you go forth with something like that without clear direction or permission from God, that's a really dangerous spot to operate from. So even as you're planning an event for 10,000 people and the name of your church is on it and people might leave, like the enemy could say whatever he wanted and it just matters. It does not matter to us. It really and it can't. And so then it's like good to be in these spots. I think I'm thankful to be in this spot where the Lord is like almost like challenging me, growing me to be like, are you as legit as you think you are? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you really mean what you say? And do you really trust me the way that you do? And even in an event to this caliber, like, are you really willing to surrender and lay it down until like the day before or the day of, or like, are you willing, like, are you really actually willing for me to wait to hear from me, for me to give you direction, up until the last minute? And so we're like, yes, like that's 100% our posture. And is it naturally comfortable? No, but it's like I still feel good about it because I know that's obedience. And so I think planning an event, big or small, that can't change. Like you can't have any more hand or control over a situation, with an event that you host 100 people and with an event that you host 10,000, and an event that costs you $500 to do, an event that costs you a lot more than that to do. Like you can't weigh that out differently. It has to be the same. You have to be like, that's how you and the Lord have to work. It has to be steady. And I think there's fruit and humility in that too, that like we have to, like, of course we want that. We have to be that, and we strive to be that. And so it's like, okay, this is good testing. It's good testing. This is good practice. This is good opportunity, even though it feels uncomfortable. So, okay. Next, which is wild because it's like, well, I kind of talked about this already. Yeah. Okay. How many people does it take to create and manage Christmas at Central, and do you pay them?
So I guess just
yes and no.
Yeah, sure, yes. Okay, so our creative arts staff is, how many of us are there? There are, we have like 10 that are here all the time. There are 8 of us that are
8 or 9.
Yeah, 8 or 9 of us that are I guess you could say full time here all the time. Yes, thankfully we do get paid. And then we've got, we do have some part-time people that are involved in that as well. But the vast majority of our volunteers, which we're talking production, which is photography, cameras, prompting, shading, all the control room stuff, lighting, online stuff, just that's just the media side of things. And for Christmas, because we do have production elements, we're talking stage hands and stage crew that are operating different things like that. You're talking obviously band, worship team, choir,
your people,
all of those.
In childcare.
Yeah, you've got people watching all these people's kids in childcare. But just alone in creative arts, not including all the guest services people that will be helping people with tickets and doors and get to their seats, and just all of those parking and all of those people. Easily creative arts alone, we're talking probably close to 100 people involved just in our side of things. And so of those 100, maybe 10% of them are paid.
Yeah, the staff people. Yeah. And not paid more. It's just like this is part of our job.
Yeah.
This is part of our salary.
Yes. Yeah, this is just what we do.
But everybody else is they're volunteers.
Yeah, pretty well. There's a real good chance if you see somebody on stage, especially that's not like Brooke or I or Noah, or we have a few people like Cade and Eli are double duty in this year. But like for the vast majority, all of our singers, all of our band, all of our choir, that's all volunteer.
And all 5 of us are staff people.
All of our
why that's
and all of our media production team and people, photographers, all of them volunteers. Minus the staff that's overseeing them.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of all the people, all of our guest service people, all the all volunteers.
All of them. So, even like our cast people, volunteers. Truly, like the only people we pay, like via contract that we like book or whatever would be for our camel, and then the aerialist. Which are the aerialists. I love them. That we've got now it's becoming a longish,
they've been
partnership.
But
they're Christians, and the work that they do, the art that they do. Outside of
it really is. Like,
it's amazing, but it's just it's so. And then again, you're sewing. Do we look at that too? Like sewing into their ministry, and they bring their kids here, and like they're so kind, and like so it's just kind of like, to me, like that's just, I think, a cool thing. It's like one thing to just like pay for the element, but it's like, but you're like sewing into these people's lives,
and they are a part of. Like we consider them a part of the team. They view themselves as a part of it. Like,
they're amazing.
They don't. It is very much not a. They give us, here's an element we want to do, but it's like I work with them and like, hey, here's what we're seeing, and they ask us, hey, what are you wanting here? And we've got some ideas for this. What do you think of this? Like, it is very much like they view this. As a part of like a 4-day ministry thing that they just get to come be a part of as well. And so I don't honestly and I mean, I've told them this, there are probably have been services in the past where I've been like, we really don't need that. But just because of their buy-in, who they are, the way they approach ministry, the way they approach their talents and abilities, it's like we want them to be a part. They want to be a part of it, not really from a financial perspective, but they want to be a part of it because, I mean, they've said, like, we don't get to do very many events where we're baptizing people at the end, and we think that that's huge.
It's
so
amazing.
Anyways, so we have total, there will be 150, probably 200 volunteers each night across all areas to make this event happen.
And we'll check in around 2:00.
Yeah, on
the 4:00 service days, we'll be here around like 2ish.
Yeah.
And then we'll leave at like 9:30 or 10.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, and then the 6 to 8 services, we'll get here around 4 and again, leave at 10. So it's like, I mean, they sacrifice hours just in the week of services, but then like, that's not counting like every rehearsal we have before that. It's
band
incredible.
Worship team. I mean, we start rehearsals in November.
And they're amazing.
Yeah.
So do you guys have a stage manager for Christmas at Central? And if not, how do you stay on top of knowing who's going out next, since there's so much going on? So we do have a stage crew.
Yeah.
We have to have a stage crew.
Yes. So we have, so I mean, we rehearse a ton for this. And so, I mean, there's a lot of that, we rehearse until we feel good about it, on that side of things, that people just kind of know where they come in, where they don't. But, it is literally, in my opinion, and I don't know, some people probably say I'm a little biased because I used to do this job. But I mean, for the guy,
there's not a job you haven't done.
Well, I know that, but for the guy sitting in my seat now, like the role of stage management and stage crew is without a doubt the most important job for my sanity and my comfort, because you've got like there's so much going on so fast. You don't have time to think about, like, is this going to be where it needs to be? Is that going to happen how it needs to happen? Will this get taken care of? What if that breaks? Who's going to handle that? What if all these different scenarios that you run through your head of what could happen. And so, yes, we have generally the last several years, Brooke's husband Hayden, Kyle Miner, those two guys for the last several years. Kyle has done it for years. I mean, when I was doing it, Kyle was doing it, but that they take care of everything, as far as on making sure elements happen the way they need to happen. If there are things that need to come off or on, that happens. Making sure people get to where they need to be. Making sure animals and their people are where they need to be.
The transition,
all of those things,
the cleanup,
and they have the
turnaround.
But I mean, we'll do. We have an hour service with about 20 minutes to turn our room around before the doors open for the next service to come in.
And before we've had like confetti cannons go off, so they've had to like vacuum.
You have live animals on stage, which they deposit things. They leave things on stage, and in hallways where they walked in. And so, I mean, like they have a whole crew of people that they are leading that are solely just making. I mean, honestly, making the service happen. That is what makes the service happen.
It just keeps it organized. It keeps, us free of like needing to be somewhere to like fix something that messes up or that's broken or a missed cue or whatever. Like there's just people who are like running the service, but like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And like last year we had an element where we had like the LED screens moving. And so like that was, you had people behind every panel, and we built this, basically like built wheels for these panels.
Yeah.
And they were the whole time sitting behind these panels, and then they were like, they had like choreography, and they were like moving these panels at different points during different songs and elements and all this, and like setting them. And you had cable managers, because as these LED screens were like moving, of course the cable, like they have to give, like feed it, I guess. So like pull, like give them some and take back and like whatever. And again, keeping it organized so they weren't getting caught, or that it was nice and like just again clean, and it just kept things going. And so but there's probably like a group of like 10
Yeah, usually had 10, 12. I mean, last year was a little different because of the panels.
We had more.
And that's too, like, I would say, like, in general, like, especially if you're planning something, like, we always start with what I would say are like wild idea. Like, what's the craziest version of the idea? And and then take that idea, work it down to like what's actually, and so
feasible.
What's feasible?
What can I actually
do? Like, you've got to, like, I don't know. There's just some real, like, we have a lot of fun. Honestly, it gets us in trouble sometimes because that's what like causes us. I mean, right now our stage is just absolutely destroyed because of some of these wild ideas that we're going to try to make happen. But speaking of those, like, we had this thought of, it's like, okay, we have these LED panels a lot of years. And then it was like this thought of like, wouldn't it be cool if we could make them move and like, change? And so it's like, granted, we put a lot of resources in it, but we are still very much operating on a tight budget to make this scale of event happen. So, I mean, it's like,
it's a free event too.
And
so
it's
you're
a free
getting
event. And so, but yeah, and then it's just, I don't know, it's really cool to then think back to like that idea started with, okay, how do we, if we took these panels, we made a move, then how does that even happen? Well, then like Brooke's saying, you've got to figure out a way to, we literally had to create we have these stands that Jeremy, who works with us, like we fabricated ourselves. Like we created these stands. These stands did not exist. And so we made them to hold LED screens with the right size casters that we can move them, with the right type of cable length and management, because obviously we had 6 different screens moving around on stage that all have to be, they weren't wireless. And so, you've got people that are solely managing cables and moving, and then, like it just, there's so much of that kind of stuff that goes into. And so I would encourage you, like, pick wild ideas, let all the ideas out, and then work down to, like what's feasible. And sometimes you might find out that the wild idea is feasible on that front.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
And with that, like even with what we shared earlier about where we are right now and like the planning process, like we've had where we started in July with ideas or, direction. We started, can we say about where we started?
Yeah.
Or we put that in our back pocket for later?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so we started with
honestly, I don't even remember where we started.
Well, what we wanted to do was we wanted to have this like large scrim that went across the whole entire stage, and the idea being like a lot of glowing light and silhouettes, and then we've used it in the past before, but we would. The projector that would go on the scrim would be, what we would create would be totally different than anything we've ever done. And so then we were like, okay, well, what if we do that? And then we're talking about silhouettes. And so then we're like, well, what if we brought in the aerialists at this point? And they were like, did a cool creative element. And they were like representing the angel as like the stories being told. And then we're leading into Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And like, you're creating these, components, and then you're bringing them to John and like, okay, here's where we're at. What do you think about this? Like, do we run with it or do we trash it? Or do we save it for another time? And then he's like, we're talking about angels, and then he's just like, well, what about stars? And so then you're like, oh, okay, like, and truly, like, and that's also, and this is a tangent, but an important one. Like, we had like these creative ideas that we felt really good about, direction, yada yada. We're meeting with our lead pastor, who's giving us his message, like in his focus point is stars, or the star, and then nothing that we've created leads or helps or supports or builds upon John's direction and his topic. And so like you have to pivot, you have to transition, you have to pocket that idea for later or go off of it in a different direction, because it has to be cohesive on every element of every part. And so then, like, if you're creative, you can be like easily maybe offended or discouraged when you're asked to kind of like keep thinking about something or dream up another idea, and instead of being, you know, kind of like downtrodden about it. Like, instead of taking an offense to it, like, it's, you know, just be like, oh, like, okay, like, again, it's just part of your job to dream and build, at least for us. And so it's like, okay, like, absolutely correct. Like, we need to go a different direction. Like, let's keep thinking about it. And so, like, we just kept going and kept, you know, changing it and creating different things. And we just had to scrap the whole thing eventually.
I was gonna say, now it
And
looks
now it doesn't even
nothing like- yeah, it
exist.
doesn't
But
even
then that got us,
exist,
which I'm not going to say, but that got us what's hopefully going to be like the coolest visual element we've ever had, in my opinion. It has potential. It has potential to be. So, anyways, but okay. This is potential to be the longest podcast we've ever done.
We can rapid fire.
Okay, so let's see. What are some of the ways you've learned to simplify creative and organizational procedures throughout the process?
Ooh,
that's a good question.
That is a great question. I think I would say one, at least from my point of view, I work with really great, talented team. I do my best to give them direction and then let them run in their lanes. And I know that when they want or need my input, they will ask.
So you're saying it's simplified it to you because you kept your hands.
I have tried to. Yeah,
like,
I would say it is more like I know what my strengths are and what my strengths aren't. I mean, I know that I have opinions and I have thoughts and ideas, but like I'm not. I can be grunt work when it comes to lighting, and I can visually have ideas, but like Aaron knows how to make something
happen,
look and happen,
and look good. Mm-hmm.
So it is silly for me to spend a bunch of time trying to do that. It's simpler, it's better, it's more efficient for me to say, Aaron,
take that.
Here is where I see this is the vision that's there. You tell me how and what is possible to make. Like, is it possible? What would it take? How can we make this work? And let him go.
So I think, I definitely think designating jobs and tasks is a way to keep things simple that we've kind of learned. You know, we stepped into planning Christmas services 3 years ago.
This will be our fourth one.
This is our fourth Christmas. And so, we've learned, in the bigger scale of this, the communication and the designation of tasks and things, and knowing this is a project we can call volunteers and be like, hey, we need this painted. Can you come in any evening and knock it out? And our volunteers want to do that. They're call us when you've got a task that we can actually come and help you with. And so that saves us a few hours, from painting this platform to going and, doing something different that maybe only we can do. So that's helps simplify that process. And on another side, organizationally for me, in keeping these organized, I always keep a Word document of every volunteer that I had and what their role was for the previous Christmas. And so for example, if I'm in charge of casting the, people on our nativity scene and then getting all the in contact with the people who own the animals, I already have their contact information from last year, and I'm going through just hey, would you like to return? And if they say yes, great, and I plug them in again. And if they say no, I'm unavailable, I can't this year, great, I know that that's open. And so that just takes the time off my hands in a significant amount, instead of sitting there at my desk thinking how do I completely ask brand new people every single year, whatever. And so naturally that really does change, because you have a lot of services, you have a lot of rehearsals, people's lives change. So I've never once had the exact same cast. I've never once. And so, but again, a starting point of the reoccurring people, and it makes it easier because they already know what they're doing and what to expect. And so you don't have to communicate in such detail, or you don't have to feel you're backtracking as much with a brand new group. You've got some veterans, which makes it easier, and then they kind of can no pun intended, but shepherd the other shepherds who are new. And so that's,
would you
super
call them
helpful.
wise men?
Well, they are wise men. So anyways, but so I think that's an example of things that we've been able to simplify. This is also random, but also with them is we have this terrible closet in the building that is scary. We don't go in it. And it's got like costumes from like who knows how long ago and just random stuff, choir
Our
robes, like
grandparents wore those.
scary stuff. And so like I refuse to put anything back in there. So now I've gotten smart and we've got a Christmas closet upstairs. And so I keep all of their costumes, all of their props labeled and on like a rack and in bins, and it's just in one spot. So like I did that last year because like the first 2 years I went like digging, like trying to find. And like then of course if other people are in there getting other things, it get lost or moves, it gets lost or someone moves it or whatever, and then you spend time searching for it. And like now I don't do that. And so now I'm just like it's labeled, organized, it's in the closet for Christmas storage, and it's done. So that used to take me hours to figure out, and now it's done in like 10 minutes. So again, simplified. Okay, we are almost, I mean, seriously, if you guys are still listening to this, then you are quite the curious people because you're invested. Okay, what is your favorite way that you've seen Christmas at Central grow and evolve over the years? How do you see it progressing in the future?
I think my favorite way, it really is, it's the relationships that come from it.
That's good.
It's, just like we were talking about with the aerialists, and it's even people, not even just the people that go here, but like Chance who owns our Lucille the camel.
Yeah,
I mean, like
Lucille.
She's been with us for since we started doing live nativity. And so just like the relationship we have there, the relationship with our aerialist team, and then just all the other, like you spend so much time one as a staff. Like I always love this time of year because it's one of the it's
Wait, no, don't answer that part yet.
okay.
Save that for later.
Sorry,
because that will be your answer for the last question.
Okay,
I already know.
Okay, but like with our volunteers, I mean, we will spend hours, days. I mean, we will, and a lot of it is, especially on service days, there's downtime. And so you're just hanging out together, and you're, and it really is a growing time of you learn, just when you spend time with people, you learn about them. And so I always love coming out of Christmas at Central just because, there's choir people that, you spend time with that you don't normally spend,
and to answer the question, you're saying like what's evolved, you're more like relationally.
Yeah.
Like that's what you've seen
I mean, because, and I mean, obviously the event itself has grown. I think every year I love that, I feel like, and not that this wasn't ever the direction, but I know that when we came in with a maybe a different vision or different goal outcome of what we wanted to see, and just to see baptisms and that happen, and that has grown each year toward now. It's like it's not a if, it's just an expected part of like, Christmas
Lord,
at Central is like will we, but like, Lord, how many do we get to this year?
Well, we'll be downstairs eating dinner or something, and we'll get word like 3 baptisms, and then everybody's like cheering together like 3 baptisms, and we're eating like pizza or sandwiches or something. We're like, and then we like pause what we're doing, and people will like go in the worship center and watch these people be baptized. So it's amazing. I feel like for me, the way it's evolved, like 10 services, we've never done 10, have we? What did we do last year?
Well, we added one last minute last year,
which was 9. And so this year we've added another.
This is the most.
So the way it's evolved, I think, just the number of services that we're doing, and then which would mean then the number of people we get to like share that experience with, and like how do we see it progressing in the future? Well, and ticket sales was huge, like offering the ability to have a ticket like beforehand, was huge, because before it was like you show up and people will show up hours early to wait at the door and then come in, and if they can't fit, you have people on guest services counting everybody who's coming in, and like it's crazy. And so like this year, we're hoping people honor the system as well as they possibly can, so we can get the room full every service of people who've seen it for the first time, and so anyways, that's another way that I think it's evolved. And then progressing the future, I don't know. I think one day we're going to have to just do one big night at like one large stadium or theater, and it'd be a whole thing.
It
but
really is.
I don't know what will come. I don't know what the Lord has in store.
It's 10 this year feels like it's hard to imagine, and we got lucky this year with the way the schedule falls, with it being really
Lord knew what he was doing.
over a whole weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that part.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so this question is, how do you balance ministry and home life, basically, during such a demanding season? This is a great question. We're about to have church finally after like 4 hours of this episode. How do you balance ministry and home during such a demanding season? Well, first, I feel like both are ministry and both are just equally my life. Like they don't feel separate. It just and I'm in a unique position because my husband Hayden is also on staff here at Central, and our kids, they love being here. And so I don't know, it just feels like what happens at home and what happens here during the season is just cohesive. But like, of course, when you're talking about hours of a day you spend at the building, then you spend at your house, I think that's the question too. And so for me, I want to speak on that because it is a demanding season, but I do feel like if we're wise and we ask the Lord to stretch our time and to help us have clear thoughts and help me be as productive and proactive as I can for things in both places to where I don't feel like I'm drowning, because I just operate better that way. And so if I can, I'm like, show me what I need to do today. I'll ask the Lord, like, what do I need to accomplish right now today to be in a good spot for these services? Because we talk often, like we don't want to have been empty the first night of service when it's like what it's all about. Like everything we've been working towards and everything we've been building and everything, the hours we've spent, the lack of sleep we've gotten, like all of it's for these 10 services. And then yet we show up at these services and we're absolutely empty and we have zero energy. We have, we feel whatever. And it's like, what's the point of that? Like that's not wise and it's not healthy. And I don't believe God's called us to operate that way. So I'm like, okay, Lord, then with your help, and I'm only human, and with this amount of capacity, how am I going to make this work? And so, I mean, truly, like we've prioritized like staying in devotional, staying in the word. Like if we know we're having a late night, have a slower morning, or like things with our kids. If it's like, I have to take, for example, yesterday, I'm like, I have to take the first half of my day, to just get some stuff done for my family, and then like dedicate the back half of my day strictly so I'm undistracted with things I need to get done, at the church. And so for me, that's super helpful. I mean, I don't know what you do, and your schedule here is different than mine, when it comes to the craziness of late nights and, the demand of the season. But I do think that's how I don't think it's possible to balance. I think it's just an order. It's just a matter of like, how are you going to steward and maintain the best way that, the Lord can help you do. And so, yeah, those are just things that, help me. But truly, the Lord helps me every single day.
Yeah.
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 Well, I will tell you this also. Hold on, because you also are like, I can't answer this question. But I will say this is practical, but like my Christmas shopping is already almost done. Mm-hmm. Okay. So like for Black Friday, I literally felt the Lord say like, get it done now. And so I was like, well, okay. So like I am almost done with all my Christmas shopping. And usually I would be thinking about, well, what am I going to do with all that? And then wrapping all the things and doing all the things. And yet services start tomorrow. Like, and you are so busy with Christmas at Central. You're like, oh wait, like actually Christmas is like coming. So, anyways, like, so that's something that genuinely the Lord is like, handle and take care of now. And just this morning when I was praying about like, what do I need to do next? And, to stay on top of it, whatever. And today he said, you need to figure out what you're wearing this weekend. He loves me. And that's true. Like handle that, because it's a thing on my to-do list. It's a shopping errand I have to go and run and do. And it takes up space and time. And so he's like, handle it this weekend, handle it now. Where beforehand, especially you, it's so you're sending Adrian to Kohl's like the morning of services, but like it's always the last thing we think about because there's 10,000 other things to think about before that. So anyways, I'm serious when I say ask the Lord what you need to do today, and he will tell you. And so then do it, and then you'll be on his timeline. And the weight that I don't feel this year is astronomically different having approached it this way. Yeah. So there's a lot of wisdom in that. I'm thankful. Okay, your turn, boss.
All right. So it's just there's no other way to say it other than like it. I would say from somebody else looking in, you would assume that I would say that they would answer the question of like, well, it's certainly not balanced for me. But I'll say this. The demands that it requires to to get this stuff to a point, just flat out, like pretty much from starting this Monday of this week on through, it's an all day, every day thing. It just is. And what I would say about regarding home in that is, when you enter into ministry, whether your spouse works at the church or not, there is an understanding that you and your spouse have to have going into the role that, especially the role that I have, that like, although I may have the title and the church pays me, this is very much a role that we both are going to have to carry, because, and I just flat out could not do the role that I do if Adrian did not understand that and accept that,
and support that,
and support it and buy into it. And so, just transparency, like, this week I've not gotten home before 10 o'clock at night. And so, and honestly, I probably won't from here on out. But it's Adrian knows that like this is not a everyday, like this is not my normal life. Like we understand what we're working towards, and she understands that. We will be, she will be extra intentional. This time of year of like, what we've talked about on here, we go do the real tree thing, cut it down.
I say get to that
so
part.
we make sure that, we do that ahead of time. Really basically before December comes, because we know once December comes, this schedule kind of shifts in our household. She will be intentional to bring the kids here. Because I just won't get to see them at home. And so making sure that, they will drop coffee by, or they will bring food by, or they will
come to help,
or they will come help, or they will bring their dinner here and eat dinner here at the church.
And Adrian's really good because she's like a runner for you. So like and she's a teacher, and so like when she's like when they're off or in the evenings or whatever, like the other day you were just like, oh my gosh, like who can literally go and do this? Like we need this right now. It's like, oh, we'll send Adrian. Adrian will go. Like that's how Adrian, like that's, and her. I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but like knowing her, like that's how she serves. Like that's like what she wants to do to contribute, because she knows it supports you. It gets a task off your to-do list that, like her and the kids hopped in the car and went to go to Fairview or something to grab light. Like, know, it's just like that's, and so that's to me, like part of the balance with this question. It's like a partnership, but like you shift your normal for, a month or a few weeks or whatever for like this season, because it's part of the job, sure, but like you're not doing it in neglect. Like, so like she's still with you and for you and vice versa. Like, and you do your Monday night dinners still, like people who don't know what that is, it's just, you guys cook and host, your crew and, church, I don't want to say family, I don't know, like you just have a close-knit group of people that come on Monday nights and you feed them. Like, so, there are still things that like, although the hours here you spend increase, but like, I think the role then Adrian and the kiddos take on to like support you in that and be a part of that, to me is how you balance that and how you steward that. Like you have to have that shift and the understanding that it's just kind of like the shift is required for the season. And so, I mean, and you just do it the best you can with a good attitude and
so, and that's, and like I said, that's 100% of like, we know going in, and that's something that we communicate leading in of like, I make sure that like she understands, like, hey, rehearsals are going to start here. These are when rehearsals are. Hey, these are the certain targets of projects, that have to be done. And so, until we hit those, like this is kind of what the week could look like, and so I try to do my best to communicate to her on that front. And then I would say on the flip side of that though, and I have not always been great at this, but this is something that I have really worked on and have done much better at last year. And, on the flip side of that though, come the 24th, I will be, we take time off here, obviously, in those coming weeks. And so I go above and beyond extra intentional to then make sure that when I have the days off here, that like they are days off. You know, I probably won't even bring laptop home, kind of thing, because you know, I haven't been home, and so, or if I have been there, it's, you know, you're working, and so you know, I think that's an important thing of like, you have to be able to come out of those shifts, because it is not sustainable or okay for it to continue past what it needs.
But like when you know there's an end point, and you know it's like this is the season what it's for, it's just a different kind of grind. It really is, and even for your family and our kids, like they think it's fun, and like they're excited to be a part of it, you know. But like it is weighty and it is costly. But when you're ministry minded, and like I said, both worlds are like together. Like this is just a season, and we're all ministry minded, and like. We get to, you know, just like we talked about the last episode, like this, like, you know, like it is an honor that we get to be here and be used in this way, and that we get to be a part of what God is doing. And like, that's our perspective. And that could be a whole other thing. But so speaking of that though, like, probably I think we would both agree, because the next question is, what is the most challenging part and what is your favorite part? And I think we both agree the most challenging part of Christmas at Central is the shift that we have to take on, you know, with the time it takes, and making sure we do that as healthily and as godly as we can, as, you know, just like as intentionally as we can, to steward, to honor, to communicate, to be present, to just, you know, do with the ebb and flow. Like, you know, I think that's the most challenging part is just to walk the busyness of the hustle and bustle, and yet when to be completely still when the Lord says be completely still. Like we've got First Thursday, and we're like, Lord, what are we doing for First Thursday? And it was be completely still. And so, you know, that was out of our comfort zone to scrap like First Thursday, like what we normally do, because we normally have like a full set, and we normally have like people there, or sometimes, you know, whatever. And like people expect something when they come in, and when you feel like you have to like do something different and catch your people off guard, you're like, oh, I don't want to disappoint you, but like, this is what the Lord said to do. Our people get that. And so anyways, but like the Lord's like, for First Thursday in the season of a hustle and bustle, you are to be completely still and to pray. And so it's like, again, it's challenging, but then that leads into my favorite part. It's just like, it is the fact that I truly believe that the Lord is 100% ahead of us, and that there's nothing I could or couldn't do that will stop what God, or halt, or whatever, you know, what God is going to accomplish in this season. So it's like there is a freedom that I feel, which is my favorite part, because it still makes it like fun. So you don't die under this man-made pressure of success, or of numbers, or of feedback, or of, you know, whatever. It's just like you could die there with the weight of like fear of man and whatever. And it's like, we don't feel that. Like, I don't feel that at all. And like, that's my favorite part. Like, we just get to create this fun event and do it as obediently as possible, and yet see the fruit of it, because it's only because of God. And I know that. And so that's my favorite part, is that it's still fun, and I don't have this weird pressure, I don't know, to perform a certain way, or to create a certain something, or to, you know, the end goal to be whatever. Like, it's just like, we're going to have church, and people are going to get saved, and we're going to get to see the fruit of the hours we've sown in, out of obedience, you know, to the move of God in this church and for this time. And so, that's my favorite part. Yeah. What's your favorite part?
I mean, I would say the leading up to, like,
that's what you were.
I mean, starting to say. I would say, like, these 3 weeks are truly, I mean, I know a lot of people, we were telling some of our volunteers last night, talking about things or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's crazy, you know, you're crazy. It's crazy that you know, but it's like, it really is just, I mean, I love it from one, because I mean, as we've said a million times on here, like, I mean, I am a creative, I am a builder, like, so to have a vision, to catch a vision, and then to make it come to life is just so much fun. And
you're still like, because of the Lord's help, you're like, I don't know how we pull that off.
No, yeah. And I mean, like
only God.
I mean, literally, like, Aaron and I were just down there. I mean, like, you know, and it's just because you really are, like, you just don't know until you start doing it. So, I mean, like, you know, things are changing and you're having to adjust, or you're coming up with new, you know, now that you see this, you're like, what about this? Or let's, you know,
that doesn't work. How do we transition?
Or like, hey,
what
this
else?
This isn't turning out the way we thought. Let's adjust. And so there's so much of that is fun. And then, like I was alluding to earlier, like, just, we spend so much time with our team, our creative arts team in general, just when we do a lot of life together. But like, we do a lot of extra life together during this season, and a lot of even just lunches and meals and dinners, because we're working late, and that we'll eat together. And I genuinely love our people, and I love being with them. And it is not like I look forward to, the just, because we do have, it's stressful. It is,
and you're exhausted.
It is
sure,
tiring. It is hard work. It is stressful, but we have so much fun. And that's really what it's like. It's just, that's what it's about.
And to add to that, like, our people feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, so you've got 100+ volunteers who are just as excited to be a part of what's going on and to serve in the capacity that they're serving, and the hustle and bustle, and like the late night rehearsals, and the like quick changes the day before, like, the just like the excitement for like, look at the people in the room, like we get to, minister to right now. Like, it's just the excitement of what we get to do. Like, it brings so much joy, and it is so much fun. And so like, and
that's that, like the actual, I would say, like, my favorite part of like when we finally get to actual services, it's those light bulb moments where you see, like, you see that little, like the little kid that, whether it's because we made it snow inside, or they see that whatever, but like, the little kid, you see that smile, that laugh of like that family together, whether it's during Silent Night, you're watching families hug and tell each other they love each other, and, like those sort of things, or you're seeing people out there that aren't biological family, but have a family right now, because, and you're watching that, or you see the person get baptized after service. Like, it's just those moments of like, or you see people, like, it finally kind of trigger in people's minds of like, holy smokes, like Christmas really is about Jesus. And like like he really did come to save me. Yeah. And like, he really does care about me, and he really does love me. And when you just see that really connect, and it's just, that's the best part.
And I just think, like, here we are, I'm an unworthy servant.
Yeah, for sure.
Simply just doing my duty, so it's just incredible. But we hope that you come. If there's tickets left, I don't know. We're almost
by this time this episode airs, I don't know if we will.
Fun fact, if you are listening to this, what will be helpful is closer to time, like, keep looking, because people will release their tickets. So if they reserve tickets and then they can't go last minute, or if they reserve tickets like too many that they don't need, they'll release. So like, if there's only like one day and one time that you can make it, like, keep checking on Eventbrite or our website or whatever to like see if any more are available, and hit the shop on, click the map. You have to like buy it on the map, that way you can like see the seats. But like, so like, don't give up hope. Like, if the service you need to go to is sold out, like, it might not be sold out, like, even up to the day of. So like, totally,
I would encourage you, if you don't follow Central on Facebook specifically, I would encourage you, or Instagram, be sure to follow Central Christian Church Mount Vernon on those social medias, because that's where we'll be doing our best, the day of that service, to let people know what's available, and we're telling all of our people, if you're one of our people, please, if you have tickets you're not going to use, let us know, and we can release those back, because we want as many people as possible to have the opportunity. The last thing we want to see, not from just a numbers perspective, but the last thing we want to see is 100 or 200 empty seats that just people didn't show, and that could have been 100 or 200 people with an opportunity to maybe be introduced to Jesus for the first time. And so it's not because we just want the room full. It's just we really believe in what God has for people, these services, and we want as many people as possible to experience that. So if you know you're going to have extra tickets, please let us know, and we'll help get those in the hands of somebody that can use them. So
'tis the season.
Tis a lot. Thanks
for listening to the longest episode ever.
Yeah, and if you have more questions, you can.
Those are great questions.
Email us, Eric at Central Now. That's you can email me there too. Whatever the actual email is, Eric at thepraisepodcast.com or Brooke at thepraisepodcast.com. Again, check out the website praisepodcast.com. Follow us on Instagram. Subscribe to YouTube. all those things just help the podcast get seen, heard by more people, and it's just going to connect you more. So we appreciate you listening. We hope if we don't hear or see from you before then that you and your family have a very Merry Christmas and that you are getting the most out of this Christmas season. And we love you all. Appreciate you all. And as we always say, let's be people in every way, every day that bring the praise. We'll see you next time.